We are live.
Okay. Introduce me.
Hi, everyone. Today, Stephen Avery Project, we are talking with Paul Calusinski, who is the father of Melissa Calusinski, who has been in prison for 10 years for a murder she didn't commit. And Kathleen Zellner is her attorney and just filed, it's a habeas corpus writ
Correct.
for her yesterday. So her father, Paul, wants to talk to you all about Melissa's case, letting you know what the case is, where it's at now, and then he's going to have several guests that will be calling in, and he will introduce them. And then over here we've got a board where he'll be writing things for you as well.
How do I get you on here? I'm on the Stephen Avery's project.
As long as you're on the public page.
Okay, it's public page.
Yeah.
It's just I got one that says Stephen Avery's project and Facebook.
So go to that and see if that's because we have a page and the page is open and public, and then the group is private.
Okay, I don't see. All I see is Melissa's picture on there.
Because that's announcing
that way I
the
can
event.
answer questions too, and you don't have to read them to me.
Oh, sure.
Let's try this one. Let's see here.
The picture of it is a picture of Stephen.
Right here. That it?
Yes.
Okay. I click on that.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I don't see me on there. Hold on. Let's try it again.
You may have to refresh it.
I just did that again. Let's go to home. Okay, what's wrong here? Technical difficulties, everybody.
Well, so far the people tuning in are saying hello to you.
Hello, everybody.
There's 130 people on currently.
Yeah, just like on what is it, Christmas Vacation with what is it, with Chubby Chase, where they say that for the mom to say, go in the other room, say hello to everybody. So, hello, everybody. And then she says, what did I do? Pass wind? Little joke there, everybody.
Yeah.
You know. All right, I gotta see what's wrong here. I got my sidekick next to me.
James Didcock is watching currently. I just saw him come on the screen.
Okay, great. Hello, James. How are you, sir?
And we've got Joshua saying, oh, that's people who are asking questions about Stephen or Brendan today. We're not discussing Stephen's case. We're discussing Melissa's case. So
that's Melissa Calusinski's case is another case that Kathleen Zellner is doing. I gotta lift him up. Is doing, or let's put it this way. Melissa Calusinski's case was before the Stephen Avery's case, and shortly after that, she then did the, contracted Stephen Avery's family into doing their case, and so with that all said, it says I gotta like it first. That's probably why I'm not getting in.
And James Didcock said hello.
Hello, sir. Let's do this first. I want to start from one of the areas here, and the thing that I'm going to do today is give me 1 second, because like I say, sometimes this is not easy to do. My puppy here protecting me, as usual. Let's start with our first call, and this will be Mr. Paul Forman. Well, like I said, this is the first time for me doing this stuff, so you gotta bear with me, everybody. Mr. Forman was the one that was working with Dr. Choi on the autopsy of Benjamin Kingen. Hello, I'm going to put you on speaker, all right, Paul? Okay, Mr. Forman, are you there? We're live on the Stephen Avery's project today, and we're bringing everybody up to date on Kathleen's case of Melissa Calusinski, which you know I am the father of. And Jax, why don't you come a little bit closer? That way the people can hear, and you know, that way
Get way
makes
close
it
up of your face.
Yeah. Hey, enough of that. She's fine. Okay, Paul. Basically, introduce yourself to the public and tell them who you are and how you got involved with this, and then I've got some questions that we'll go through and talk about, okay?
Yeah. My name is Paul Forman. I am a senior investigator for the Lake County Coroner's Office. I was the case deputy that handled the decedents and the defendants' investigation of the death. I have since retired from the coroner's office after the case had gone to trial.
Paul, let me put a question to you there while you're saying that. You know, when you were with us at pretrial, when you testified, is it your opinion that they made a suggestion that maybe you should retire and maybe you should take and, you know, they wanted you far away from this case as possible. So in a way, they offered you a retirement, correct?
Basically, I was going out on medical retirement. I had requested a position that would meet my doctor's orders.
Right.
And the county refused to place me in that position, and in fact, discharged me from the county.
So basically, it was shortly before Melissa went to trial, correct?
That is correct.
So basically, they actually really didn't want you part of the case in the way of testifying, because basically what we know today, we didn't know then, but what we do know today is about the x-rays, and what we know today is also that, I'll let you tell them what they gave you. I'm holding it in my hand, everybody. With your permission, Paul, may I show this to the public?
Yes, you may.
Okay, this is what I'm holding is a grand jury subpoena that was given to Mr. Forman shortly before the evidentiary hearing that Kathleen and Doug were going to call Mr. Forman regarding his testimony regarding the autopsy of Benjamin Kingen, where at this time we didn't know that Dr. Montez indeed did not do an autopsy like he testified and manipulated the skull. And I'll kind of let Paul go through that, and then also Paul talk about the grand jury subpoena and why we believe what they did and why they did it. Go ahead, Paul.
Of course. What had happened was the state's attorney's office for Lake County had been basically pressuring me, and comments were made from the state's attorney's office regarding, we thought you were going to help us out with this case, and so on and so forth. I felt very pressured. They were continuously contacting me via telephone. They were continuously contacting me regarding subpoenas. They went as far as had the local police come to my house. There were 4 police officers, and the 4 police officers served me a subpoena to appear in court, which I already had a copy of. Now, I did receive a grand jury subpoena, and the grand jury subpoena, if you look very closely at it, has no case information whatsoever on it. It has a date on it that does not correspond with the grand jury's normal meeting date, nor does the time correspond. The state's attorney basically had exerted as much pressure as they could to get me into their office to interview me.
Hold on one second, Paul. Paul, hold on 1 second. Everybody, if you can, you might want to turn your volume up on your computer, your iPads, or your phones, because sometimes it's hard to hear on the phone. I'm sorry, this is the first time I've ever done this, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last because, as I've told you in the past, I'm not going to fight until Melissa's out. So let me see if I could turn my phone up, Paul. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, I'm up all the way, and I think everybody can kind of give me a...
Nobody has said that they can't hear.
Oh,
so.
okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
Okay. So as part of this issue with the Lake County State's Attorney pressuring me, that only came about as a result of my speaking with the defendant, Melissa's attorney, Ms. Zellner.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that they were basically trying to stop you from talking with Kathleen? Is it maybe because you knew the truth about what was about ready to happen and how the evidence was going to come out that my daughter, Melissa Calusinski, was innocent?
Well, what happened was I went to Ms. Zellner's office for an initial meeting. She had presented me with a packet of the testimony of the trial for Melissa. She asked that I go home and read it, and we scheduled a second meeting. And when we scheduled the second meeting, I walked into her office, and when I was at the conference table, I tossed the paperwork down, and I said, Dr. Montez's testimony is an out-and-out lie. He testifies that he examined Benjamin. He didn't say he autopsied, but he said he examined Benjamin with myself and another police officer present. Well, this was the perfect storm for them. I wasn't there to testify. And the police officer that Dr. Montez testifies that was there to observe this examination had since been deceased. So there's nobody to go back to at this point in the trial to refute anything.
Let me give for the viewers that basically the one that is deceased was not because of Melissa's case or Benjamin. It was just something that happened to the gentleman, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that there was no wrongdoing by anybody taking and doing something to the individual. Now, to get back to that and what you knew about the autopsy, tell the folks also about what you knew about these x-rays that came to light.
I was contacted by Ms. Zellner's associate.
Right. Please don't say his name. I'd rather keep that out.
What's that?
Please do not say who the investigator was, please.
No. And as a result of him contacting me, he showed me some x-rays, and he said, do you remember taking these x-rays? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, I remember taking those x-rays. And I explained to him how the process works, and he said, would you be willing to sign an affidavit to that effect? And I said, absolutely. So
and was his
signed an affidavit, stating that yes, indeed, I did take X-rays.
Right. Now, once you saw his notes in that,
of the initial autopsy with Dr. Choi.
Right. But let me ask you this, Paul. Once that you saw his notes and what you said to him and what he said to you, do you find that to be true or untrue? And explain why I'm asking you this question.
As far as the x-rays or as far as Dr. Montez's testimony?
Both.
Okay. As far as the x-rays were concerned, again, I looked at them, and the associate from Miss Zellner's office was quite surprised that I remembered as many details as I did about the case.
Yeah, you're an encyclopedia.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have that type of memory. I can remember back many years in cases. And as I reviewed Dr. Montez's testimony, Dr. Montez testifies that not only were myself and the other police officer in the room, but Dr. Montez testifies that he, in fact, removes his gloves and touches the fracture on the decedent's skull with his bare hand and feels it, and he makes a comment to whether or not it was sticky, which indicates whether or not it was healing or if it was fresh or not. Well, keep in mind, at the autopsy that was performed with Dr. Choi, that skull cap that we were examining was cleaned and scrubbed and dried with a towel, and actually vigorously scrubbed, because we needed to get as clear pictures as possible so there was no glistening.
Okay, now I got another one question for you, Paul. The reason why we're doing this is not just to put this out to the public. I want you to tell the public the reason why we're doing this today and why you have testified on behalf of my daughter and on behalf of the deceased, Benjamin Kingen.
This case is a travesty. We have two families that are seriously affected here by this case. We have Melissa and we have Benjamin, and we have the families that go along with it. You want to know something? We need to go back and seriously review this. The reason I came forward after being contacted by one of Miss Zellner's associates for Melissa's defense is, after reading the initial testimony, I knew that there was false information in the initial trial.
Okay, well here, let me ask you this question. Now, a lot of people may not know this, and I know this question's going to be sounding a little bit morbid, but a little bit, maybe the public can understand why Melissa gave 5 different scenarios when they did what they did when they interrogated her. Basically, were you involved with Dr. Choi on trying to recreate what Falenko and Detective Kern were trying to get my daughter to say? In other words, were you using the dead cadaver body trying to recreate what they were putting in her, in the words into her mouth or into her head on how this may have happened to Benjamin?
Both myself, Dr. Choi, and Dave Thomas, who was a police officer with the Major Crimes Task Force, were present when we were trying to recreate scenarios that would cause the injury to Benjamin.
Okay, so during the time that they were interrogating Melissa, you all were back at the coroner's office trying to recreate what may have happened to Benjamin, and when they turned around and they couldn't do or recreate what it was, and after the hours and hours and hours, which were approximately, by the time you got done with Detective Hyde, approximately 12 to 13 hours of interrogation, once they got Melissa to say what they wanted her to say because she couldn't take it anymore, basically then you all stopped and trying to do what George Folinko wanted. Is that correct?
That is correct. What we came to the conclusion of at the time, we were unable to recreate a scenario that would cause the alleged fracture to Benjamin.
Okay, but
Because
we
of the
now know,
location
but
of
we now,
fracture on the skull.
right, but we now know that there never was a fracture. And to your opinion, as helping Dr. Choi, because you've done many autopsies with them, correct?
That is correct.
At the time that this all happened, basically, Detective Hyde and Folinko says it was as if it was a 1 to 2 story fall, and kept putting those words into Dr. Choi's mouth and getting him to agree to that. Is that correct?
That would be correct. In fact, initially, Dr. Choi had also communicated that to myself. However, after Dr. Choi went back and re-examined the slides, the histology slides, he then came forward and admitted to making an error. And
But isn't that kind of unusual that a doctor, such in a case like this, would come forward and admit to an error? And what he was trying to do is set the record straight, because he also believed, by putting my daughter in prison for a crime she didn't do, that indeed he made a mistake, and he was being pushed by both the Crimes Task Force and Detective Hyde.
Dr. Choi, let me back up. The task force and Mr. Hyde, Officer Hyde, I'm not sure his title,
He's a
were
detective.
attempting to manipulate Dr. Choi to write the report and scenario around what Melissa had allegedly brought about during the interrogation.
Okay, listen, before I let you go, because we have other callers that I've got to take care, what do you want to say to the public as you explained or expressed your opinion and expressed your thoughts towards my family and the Kingan family, but what do you mostly want to say, because to my daughter Melissa?
Well, Paul, you and I have worked together for a few years now, and you know how I feel about this case. I'm very strong on working for Melissa's case.
You want to see Melissa be freed, that she was wrongly convicted, and that's not me putting words in your mouth. Basically,
You are not putting words in my mouth at all, and you and I have discussed this on many occasions. I feel that it's just a travesty.
You
We
want
have
to-
two families affected, you and Benjamin's family. We need to go back, re-examine all of this, and do the right thing.
right. In other words, you want to make a wrong right. Am I correct in saying that?
You are absolutely correct. I feel terrible for Melissa. I feel terrible for you and your family. And my job, my commitment, I was a sworn deputy, and my commitment is to do the best job I can for the public. And if I find something or I discover something that occurred or didn't occur that may change or will change the outcome of a case, I'm going to bring it forward.
Okay, one other thing before I let you go, and this has been bothering me. The state brought forward that you, because of your disability, that when you testified for them, everything was honky-dory. But once you started telling the truth and admitting that there were mistakes made, what was the state's position on you? And then I got to let you go, Paul.
Okay. In brief, when I was the deputy coroner, I testified for the state's attorney's office, the prosecution. And at no point in time was I ever considered a quote-unquote uncredible person to testify.
Did you take notes?
Regarding?
Regarding the case, because it's my understanding that the paperwork you gave Dr. Montez, he didn't take notes, but he read Benjamin Kingan's file that was done by Dr. Choi, and basically, when you were at the evidentiary hearing, you had notes, and basically, they believed somebody that who committed perjury over somebody who was trying to get the record straight and telling the truth there. Why do you think the state did not bring Dr. Montez in versus of saying because of what was wrong with you that you had a problem and that now you were unbelievable, or the word you were using, uncredible?
Yes. First of all, this is the first time I've ever testified for the defense. This was new for me. The state's attorney realized, and it was no secret, that I had a disability. However, my disability does not affect my ability.
That's what I wanted to get out, because people, the state's attorney tried to put that onto the stand and try to use your disability against you. So in no way, shape, or form did that ever take you and for the type of work you were doing. So when you were okay doing it back when the trial had just started in pretrial, everything was honky-dory. But the minute you testified for the defense, oh, there's a problem with you and you're uncredible and you can't believe because of your disability. Am I correct in saying that?
You're correct. And in fact, one issue that arose is because of my disability, of course, as you said, I was not credible. However, we have to keep one thing in mind. I was testifying off of my report that was written at the time of the incident. I was not testifying from memory. I was not testifying from anything other than what was contained in my written report from 2009.
Okay, here. I've got one thing that I want to read to you, and I think you and I have talked about this, and the reason I want to read this to you and then end it here because I've got another call that's going to be coming in here in a few minutes.
Absolutely.
This is, and I'm going to read this to you. You've seen the document. It's DCFS dated June 10th, 2009, Illinois Department of Child and Family Services, and it says investigation of investigation suspected of child abuse and neglect to mandate reporter, and it's got your name at the top. I'm just going to ask you one question, then I'm going to read the letter. Did you file something with DCFS, yes or no?
I'm a mandatory reporter.
Okay.
DCFS.
Okay.
And
now,
immediately upon returning to the coroner's office, I did have to contact them to file this report.
All right. Now I'm going to read to you, because you were unaware of it until I brought it to your attention. It says, and I'll show the public this. Dear Mr. Forman, regarding SCR 1846241B, name Minnesubi Daycare Center. This department has completed its investigation of the report of suspected child abuse and or neglect that you reported on the date noted above. After thorough evaluation and circumstances, we have determined your report to be unfounded. This means that our Child Protective Services was unable to document credible evidence of a child abuse or neglect in the investigation. As a mandated reporter, you are entitled to review the investigation if you believe the investigation to be inadequate. You have 10 days from the date of the letter to respond. Please provide specific information that exists prior to the date notifying which supports and indicates findings. All material should be mailed to the attention for review. The significant document has been presented. The review request will proceed. If the documentation is insufficient, you will be notified in writing that the request has been denied. Thank you for demonstrating your concerns in health safety of children. In the future, you again support and suspect that all these or any other children are being abused or neglected. Please call our child abuse hotline. Sincerely, Linda Everett Williams, Administrator, State Register. Now, did you ever receive this letter when you were in the coroner's office?
No. In fact, I had no knowledge of that existing until you and I had a conversation.
Who was working in the coroner's office as the coroner back on June 10, 2009?
I was not shown that letter.
Right, but who was the coroner at the time?
I was employed in the coroner's office until May of 2011.
Okay, who was the coroner back on June 10, 2009? It was not Dr. Rudd, correct?
It would be difficult to say.
Would it have been Dr. Richard Keller?
Well, could have been Richard Keller.
Well, he didn't leave the coroner's office until, here, Paul, he didn't leave the coroner's office until following in the fall regarding, and I don't want to get into what he did, but in regarding in the fall, he didn't leave until then, and that's when he left.
Yes, you are correct now that you've refreshed my memory. Yes, it was Coroner Richard Keller that, and he is an MD as well.
Right.
Was in the office at that time.
So basically, if that letter came through, and even though it had your name on it, and it was coming from DCFS, were they entitled to open that? And if they were, do you think that was the reason why you never saw it? Because it showed that my daughter and Minnie Subi did not commit any kind of neglect to Benjamin, and that's what their outcome was?
Very well could be. Typically, the mail came in, the administrative assistant would open the mail, and she would distribute information such as that to the investigating deputy via mailbox. I didn't receive that. That's not unusual. The particular administrative assistant who is no longer employed in that position because of issues such as that, she would make the determination herself as to what was important to distribute to the deputy and what was not important to distribute to the deputy.
Okay. Hey, Paul, listen, I got to grab the other call here.
Very good.
I got to do that. I want to thank you for taking your time. I want to thank you again for coming forward and helping not just Melissa and Kathleen Zellner, but also for helping the Kingdon family to come, for you coming forward and telling exactly the truth of what happened. Because as you know, so many wrongful convictions happen in Lake County, and it just so happens that my daughter fell as being a part of one of the wrongful convictions there in Lake County. Again, I want to thank you.
That's true, yes. And you want to know something? God bless you, Melissa, Benjamin, and the Kingdon family. This has been, just as I said, a travesty for all of you. We owe it to the families, and we owe it to the public to get to the bottom of this case. And I believe we are a long way from getting to the bottom of this case at this point.
Right. Like I said, I'm going to be showing some diagrams and talking about some other stuff, but in a short form or short way, we kind of know what happened to Ben, but we can't say anything, but we can certainly let the public know. I'm going to show some diagrams here in a little while. Not using any names or anything, but there's some things that took place at the daycare, and the public needs to know the truth.
Yeah, and that's why I stepped forward, because what's happened to Melissa was not anywhere near what the case presented.
Right.
The case facts and evidence presented to the coroner's office, and that's why I came forward. And again, we owe it to both families and the public.
Okay, Paul. Well, listen, God bless you. Hope you and your family have a nice Easter, and that we'll talk soon.
I'm with you guys every step of the way, and you guys have a great day. Thank you for the time. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity, and I know you have someone else to go and get on the line, so I will leave you be.
Okay, my friend. You take it easy. Have a nice Easter.
You too, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. Well, you all heard from Mr. Forman in his own words. I had to keep it short because there's other people we got to get to on the phone. There's something I want to show you now. And
Helen wants you to plug Melissa's page too on here. Helen just posted.
oh yeah, the Justice for Melissa Calusinski's original family page.
It's called
the official family page. You are welcome to join. All you have to do is go to our page, ask to join, and as my sister and other people, as the other administrators, will be more than happy to click and welcome you with open arms.
And Helen, go ahead and in the comments in here, post a link to that page so the people watching know where to find you.
Some of you may know that Ben was a twin, and some of you may not. I want to show you a picture here. This is Ben and his sister drinking out of I believe it's a sippy cup or just a cup there.
Just a couple of straws.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm going to show you this is that it may be hard to see, but if you look here, there's a little bit of a black and blue mark up near the forehead up here. And the reason why I point that out is because this is around the time, and let me show you another picture. I'll show you a normal picture of Ben, which is right here. His head is normal in size. His sister's head is normal in size. And the next person that we get on the phone, you'll hear a little bit about circumference size and everything else. And this is Ben at his house. Do you see what he's sitting on? He's sitting on a tile floor at his home. And for somebody who very well came out in trial and during the hearing of Melissa that he was a headbanger, you would think that the parents or the doctor would recommend that he get I guess what they call some kind of special helmet of some sort. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to show you another picture with the family of them sitting on the stairs. And the reason why I'm going to show you this is that I want to point something out to you. You see Ben here with how he looks right here? Okay? Now look at this picture. His head is starting to go into a light bulb shape. Look at his eyes. His eye is starting to look like he's got a lazy eye. But the next caller, we're going to talk about that. And as soon as I get him on the phone, let's get it done. Let's move on. And our next caller will be coming up here. Any questions out there for anybody why I'm doing this or anything? And
well, you could tell them what the case is for those that don't know anything about it.
Okay, the case is about my daughter, Melissa Calusinski, who was accused of killing a little boy back in 2009. She started working at a daycare center called Minnie Subi Daycare, and that was back in 2008. My daughter, Crystal Calusinski, she got Melissa the job at Minnesota, and she worked at the Arlington Heights facility. There was 3 facilities: Arlington Heights, Hanover Park, and then of course Lincolnshire, where the tragic events that happened to little Ben. She was accused of throwing the little boy to the floor, and you heard me ask Mr. Forman. It was put out there that Melissa threw this little boy as if it was a 1 to 2 story fall. And the reason why I bring some of this up is that our next caller that we're going to get will go into a little bit more detail of about that, and can explain a little bit about that as well. And there's some other things that we'll talk about with him, and if you'll hold on, I'm getting the individual on the phone now. I appreciate y'all standing by. I appreciate y'all letting me come on to Stephen Avery's project and talking about this. Oh, I dialed wrong again.
7, 2.
Janet asked, do Benjamin's parents think Melissa is guilty?
Say that again.
Do Benjamin's parents think Melissa is guilty?
I'll explain that as we get into the program. I'll tell you a little bit about that, because that's a great question. Whoever asked that. Janet, that's a very great question. Okay, I'm getting on the phone right now, and I'm getting ready to put on the air. I'm going to put you on speaker. Everybody, this is the coroner, Dr. Thomas Rudd. Dr. Rudd, welcome to the Stephen Avery's project that we're doing, and talking about Melissa's case, and kind of introduce yourself to the public, and then I got some questions and some things that we'll go over. We just got done talking with Mr. Forman, and go ahead, Tom. Floor's yours right now for a few minutes.
Okay, as Paul said, I'm Dr. Tom Rudd. I'm actually a physician who specializes in the field of pathology, as well as a form of radiology called nuclear medicine. I worked in private practice for 15 years, and then with the commercial lab, pathology lab, for 15 years, and then was asked to run for coroner in 2011. I won in 2012. I served till 2016, and during the process of working those 4 years, I found out about the corruption within government, and it's beyond Lake County. We saw it in Cook County with the Smollett decision. I was shocked at the corruption that I saw in Lake County, specifically the Nierheim administration and the Waller administration. I originally ran because of a scathing expose in the New York Times in November, December of 2011, in which 6 people were wrongfully accused of murder. They were framed, and then they ended up winning millions of dollars. And when I got in, one of the cases I reviewed at the request of Paul and the lawyer, his first lawyer, was Melissa's case. I was shocked to find out that Melissa's case was, there were multiple errors. Not only was the autopsy misinterpreted, but the Melissa was tortured into an interrogation. And when I say tortured, the way she was interviewed matches the description of the United Nations paper on.
I got that with me, Tom. Give me 1 second and let me grab it and continue.
Okay, and so being a naive individual who was brought up to do no wrong, but to be honest, as much as I can be honest, I presented it to the state's attorney, who refused to believe what we said. The material we got was not only analyzed by me, it was analyzed by Dr. Jones, the former medical examiner of Cook County. His reputation is superb, probably one of the top 10 forensic pathologists in the nation. She was actually the one who rewrote the report. I took the report on the deceased child that Melissa was accused of causing a death. I showed it around the country at 2 meetings a year.
Hey, Tom, let me interrupt you for a minute, but I was just showing everybody online. It's called Skeletal Trauma, Identification of Injuries Resulting from Human Rights Abuse and Armed Conflict. Now, you were talking about the United Nations and stuff, that they consider that the Reed technique is considered torture. Explain a little bit about that.
All right. Well, the Reed technique was invented by a not too bright Chicago cop. Okay, not too bright Chicago cop. Basically, he retired and he wanted to continue working, so he made up some theory on how you can catch people into lying. This theory of technique basically has been disproven by every major psychological organization around.
Right. Now, the police officers are allowed to lie to the defendants or to the people who they are interviewing under the Reed technique, correct?
Yes. And so, even if we say the Reed technique is technically okay, in Melissa's case, they broke every rule. In other words, the major rule they broke was that after 1 hour of denial, according to the Reed technique, you are to stop interviewing her. And they broke that rule. She denied for hours, but after 60 minutes, she continued to deny it. They were supposed to stop and release her, and they broke that rule.
Okay, Tom, let's get into now. You're involved in the case. Paul DeLuca, when you won the election, I asked Mr. DeLuca to write you a letter, which he did. Then you got involved, and shortly after you got involved in everything, I want to go kind of step by step. The first step I want to take here is that you noticed about the old injury, and how did you come to that conclusion, and what did you find just with that portion of your investigation?
Okay, when I examined the slides, I thought maybe I had a stroke or I had lost my mind. They claimed that the injury was acute. Everything I found was chronic. It was a chronic injury.
What's the difference between chronic and acute?
Okay, an acute injury in any head trauma is fresh blood. In a chronic injury, you have old blood, and you can diagnose old blood by doing special stains. But even without the special stains, to the eye, just examining the specimen with the gross eye, the blood had a brownish tinge, which indicated iron deposition, which indicates old. So I did multiple special stains, clearly proved that it was old blood. But I did more than that. I not only used the original slides, original blocks or slides, I took additional tissue, and I proved it 6 times that it was old blood. But more importantly, even though you think, okay, it's old blood, we have a history in the medical record of the daycare center where the decedent suffered a blow to the head 6 weeks prior to his demise, exactly where we found the old blood.
Okay,
so
my question.
Solid evidence.
My question to you is that when you became a forensic pathologist, such as Dr. Montes has helped with different cases, but why is it that he didn't know or recognize or didn't want to talk to you about the old blood? That's one. Two, what do you have to do as a doctor to become an anatomic forensic pathologist?
We'll address the second question. You have to go obtain a medical degree, and then you have to take a residency, postdoctoral training, 2.5 years anatomic pathology, 2 years in clinical pathology, and if you want to be board certified in forensic pathology, you have to take an additional 1 year. So a total of 3 to 5 years, because you can skip the clinical pathology. It's not wise to. You know, a lot of forensic pathologists do 2 years of anatomic, 1 year of forensic, and they skip the clinical because it's not necessary. However, if you want to be a good full-fledged pathologist, you take both. That takes care of that.
Why is it then that Dr. Montez did not recognize the slides of it being an old injury versus of what he testified to?
Well, let's back up. I don't know if Dr. Montez looked at the slides, the original slides. I don't know that.
Okay, wait. He was shown the slides because I was there at trial. Paul DeLuca handed him those pictures of the slide with the old injury. He wouldn't even pick it up and look at it. He says, "I have no idea what this is."
Okay, well, let's back up. Forget the court proceedings, okay? Because they didn't do any special stains, so it wouldn't have shown on the pictures at the court. Here's the key. When I diagnosed what I diagnosed, I showed it to Dr. Jones, who agreed and started writing a report. I then went to Montez. Oh, wait, let me back up. I went to Dr. Choi. Who originally did the autopsy, who was in charge of signing it out, and I presented the case to him. Long story short, he agrees with me, and he signs an affidavit saying he misdiagnosed it. All right?
Right. That's exactly the same thing that Paul Forman suggested to us as well.
I then went to Dr. Montez and asked him to look at the slides. But prior to asking him to look at the slides, I showed him pictures I took from the slides through the microscope. And I was showing it to him, and I asked him to look at the slides, and he refused to look at them.
Why?
So,
What did he tell you, Dr. Rudd? What was his exact words and why he couldn't look or go into the exact part of the case again?
because he says, I work for the state's attorney.
Is that supposed to happen? Or are your entities as the coroner's office and the state's attorney supposed to be two different entities?
Well, first of all, we are both independent departments. But more importantly, he doesn't work for the state's attorney. His contract is with the coroner's office. So he lied about that, or he misspoke. He does not work for the state's attorney, okay? But that's what he told me. I'm not looking at it because I work for the state's attorney. What he meant was he's a key witness for the state's attorney, okay? That's what he meant. But that's wrong, okay? I mean, that's absolutely wrong. He's not a scientist. And we must remember, we'll bring this up, Dr. Montez has no board certification in any field whatsoever. None.
Right.
He is like a medical student who just left his 4 years in medical school.
Didn't he indeed, during the time, say that, or we found out that not only did Dr. Montez is not board certified, but when we went through, Mr. DeLuca went down in Florida to get his records, that not only did he flunk it once, he flunked it 3 times, and he said that he wasn't going to take it again.
Well, actually, I didn't know if that's true or not. I know I was told he flunked it once and decided not to take it again and just went straight to work, okay? Because this is how it works. After you spend 2 years in anatomic pathology and you want to be a forensic pathologist, you then go and spend 1 year in forensic pathology. Well, what happens is, during that 1 year in forensic, you're supposed to take your test for your anatomic, and he took his sweet time, and he flunked it, and then he left the program in forensic pathology. Unfortunately, for people who flunk the anatomic boards, they cannot take the forensic boards because they need the anatomic boards first, then the forensic boards. So he walked out of 3 years of training with absolutely no board certification. He was equivalent to a physician leaving medical school. He's highly unqualified.
Right. Now, let's go a little forward here. We got this phone call about x-rays. Explain to the public how that all transpired and what was the outcome and what happened during the evidentiary hearing, and then shortly after the evidentiary hearing, what happened to you as a result of you testifying for the defense?
Well, first of all, I received a phone call from you who said you said that you had received a phone call.
Correct.
About additional films on the decedent, and lo and behold, we went to the computer, and images of the skull that were taken at the time of the autopsy were downloaded and printed up, and they were in excellent condition. They were clearly visible as to the fact that there was no skull fracture.
Now, is that compared to the x-rays that Paul DeLuca got, matching those up, the first set of x-rays that they gave us, the 3, explain to the public why this is so important and why I bring this up and why this is so important now to Melissa's defense and getting Melissa's conviction overturned.
Well, first of all, I never knew there were x-rays in the case. So when you told me, I was stunned there were. More importantly, there were no x-rays in the decedent's file. That's why I didn't know when I reviewed it. I reviewed the autopsy, and I saw no x-rays. Now, the x-rays that we obtained on the day that you called me were far superior to the ones that we finally found that Mr. DeLuca had. These were quite inferior images because they were manipulated to look bad. And you had to know how to adjust the images yourself to make them look as good as I got. However, Mr. DeLuca could not do that, nor could his key witnesses for the defense. So they went back twice to Kristen Bishop, a totally unqualified prosecutor and current judge, totally incompetent. They went back to her twice and said, "We can't read these images. Can you help us?" And she said, "I'm sorry, that's all we had." She didn't say you need to manipulate the data, you need to adjust it. No, that's all we have. So she basically lied to Mr. DeLuca. We have a prosecutor who lied, and those images clearly show no skull fracture, and yet in the testimony during the trial, they mentioned dozens and dozens and dozens of times that there is a skull fracture, and there is none.
How were we able to determine that there were no skull fractures, Dr. Rudd?
Well, the correct way of doing it, and it's at the fault of Dr. Choi, is that if you're dealing with a case for homicide, where you're going to put somebody in jail for murder, you're supposed to take the tissue that you see with your naked eyes that you think is a skull fracture, and you submit it for microscopic analysis. You look at that skull fracture under the microscope to confirm what your eyes see, because the eyes are not always accurate.
What did you do?
There are other diseases or entities that can look like a skull fracture that only a microscopic reading could do. What Dr. Choi saw was most likely a growth plate. A growth plate can look like a fracture, and you can only make that diagnosis under a microscope, and he failed to do it.
What did you do with the X-rays? And when you found out about the blood, the X-rays, what did you do when you went and had somebody look at? What did you do a paper on that?
No, I didn't do a paper. No.
No, you didn't do a paper. But did you take it to other what do you want to call other people to look or to view what you had found?
As I said before, I showed this autopsy case on the decedent at least 8 times in my 4 years, and there was one neuroradiologist, pediatric neuroradiologist, that wanted to write the case up, and I told him that we would need permission from the family and from the state's attorney, which we wouldn't get.
Right.
So we didn't get it.
Right. Okay, now tell everybody what's happened to you since you testified at the evidentiary hearing, and why. I think the public needs to know exactly what they did to you because of what you did in the Legwinowitz case, Melissa's case, and the Hannah case. Why and what you believe happened to you.
What happened was when I ran for re-election, I had to use other people to gather signatures for the petition to get on the ballot. The first time I ran, I did it myself. The reason was because I was holding office and was busy. Anyway, I inadvertently signed 5 sheets of paper that I didn't circulate, and I was told that I could, and I won't go into the details of that.
Right.
All right, but here's the key. When I presented my petitions, they were objected to, and they claimed that I didn't witness it. Well, I knew that, so I went to a election attorney, consulted with him, and he said what you did was wrong. And I said, okay, well, if I fight this, if I go there and admit I made a mistake, what can happen to me? Can I go to jail? And he said, highly unlikely. So I said, well, that's not good enough. If what I did is wrong and I could go to jail if convicted, I will step down. I will withdraw those petitions and not be the Democratic candidate. Instead, I ran as an independent and got 15,000 signatures, not one of which was challenged, yet they threw me off the ballot and I lost the election. 3 months later, they indicted me for false petitions, perjury of petitions.
Was there somebody, when you were at the evidentiary hearing, was there somebody in the courtroom on the sidelines holding something?
Well, I think the prosecutorial attorney tried to get me to admit in front of a judge that I had done that, and I didn't fall for it.
Right. But I mean, was there somebody that was in the courtroom while you were testifying, other than the state's attorneys that were doing the evidentiary hearing? Was there somebody else on the sideline?
Well, apparently Nierheim snuck in. He was texted. He was texted by one of the attorneys to come and listen to me. So he was hiding in the back listening to me, and luckily I had brought my own attorney. They tried to set me up with that. You have to understand that when you're an accounting official, if you need a lawyer because of the work you do in the county, your lawyer is the state's attorney. So I called the state's attorney's office up and said, look, I'm testifying in front of a judge about this case. I need counsel. I need somebody to be my lawyer. And they refused to give me counsel. They refused because they were trying to set me up to make the statement under oath what I did. So I was smart enough to bring a private attorney, and I didn't say that. So then they indicted me 3 months later.
Okay, well, hey, tell the public, too, about the award that you received while you were in office.
I've got several awards. One of the awards was by a law enforcement agency, Illinois Association of Law Executives, for being honest. The Illinois Association of Law Enforcement Executives awarded me a 2015 award for the best law enforcement officer in the state of Illinois. So that didn't sit well with them either. They were pissed at that because George Falenko thought he was supposed to get it.
Okay, now, finally, last but not least, what do you want to tell the public in going forward regarding Melissa's case, the Benjamin Kingen family, and what do you think should happen as we go forward?
My personal belief, as I said before, is that Melissa needs a new trial. She should be immediately released, and they should bring her to trial with the new evidence. And I'm not sure how that will be done, whether it'll be done in federal court or through pressure on Mr. Nierheim, which I assume will not work.
Right.
But people need to, number one, if they live in the area, write to Mr. Nierheim, tell him that he's wrong and ask for a new trial. And then when Mr. Nierheim is on the ballot in 2020, do not vote for him. Please do not vote for Mr. Nierheim. Never vote for him ever again in anything he runs for. Do not vote for Nierheim.
Okay, one thing, too, that I wanted to bring up before you go. tell the public what this integrity unit is, and why do you think it is that he didn't give my daughter's case to the integrity unit?
That's very interesting, Paul. That's very, very interesting. You're right. He promoted that significantly. And your daughter's case, and maybe one other, but I know your daughter's case was the only one he rejected. And I think it's because he wants to protect the criminal major crime task force of Lake County. There's a lot of people that head the Lake County task force, major crime task force, and they are incompetent, not trained, and criminal and do criminal acts. He was protecting George Flanko, who is not even a cop. He's a 911 operator. He was given the title of the head of the crime task force. He's totally incompetent. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he was protecting George Flanko because had he given Melissa a new trial, that would have been a slap in the face to Mr. Flanko, and he has said to law enforcement, I will always cover your back no matter what. Whether you're right or wrong, I will cover you.
Okay.
That's why he didn't give it to her.
Right. Here's something that somebody gave to me some time ago. I don't know who it was, but it states on the paper that it's the BGA, shining a light on government. And on the caption, and I'll show it to the folks here in a second, it says, Lake County State's Attorney revs up wrongful conviction reforms. The profile is part of reducing the series of good government spotlight stories and showcase government employee programs and agencies and organizations reflect the BGA core values of the government, transparency and accountability and efficiency of fair play for taxpayers and community. Now, the thing is, how many people on this committee were there? And my understanding is somebody did send it to them, and they were very disappointed that they didn't get it, because after seeing the 48 Hours episode and then the information and through the evidentiary hearing about the x-rays, what was done, how it was done, one was a TIF, one, speak a little bit on that before we go, on how they manipulated it and how they did that, because if I remember right, there was somebody in the Lake County State's Attorney's Office that was responsible and is the one that apparently that made the copies of the x-rays, and he's no longer with them. Am I correct?
I don't know what you're talking about in that latter part.
That would be, I believe it was the state's attorney that was on Melissa's case.
Okay, well, that's a side point. He allegedly went back to the coroner's office and asked them to do it, and they said they couldn't be done. The problem is the person he asked denies that he ever met with them, so the state's attorney basically lied. Okay, basically lied.
Right.
And that state's attorney was worked for Mike Neerheim as his campaign director.
Matthew Martini, wasn't it?
He was accused of inappropriate sexual comments to a young prosecutor at Neerheim's office, and Neerheim forced him to step down instead of convicting him. So Neerheim protects his own, even if they're criminals.
Wasn't that Matt DiMartini?
The committee that Neerheim set up did receive all the new material, everything, x-rays, the new autopsies. They had it all. They knew about Melissa, and I'm not going to say how they got it, but they had it. And they went to him and complained to Neerheim, saying, you need to redo this. The 21 board members of Lake County also received all the material, and they went to him and said, you need to redo this, and he ignored them because he wants to protect a crooked cop by the name of George Flanko.
Yeah, wasn't that the same officer that accused other individuals in the Legwinowitz case of doing wrongdoing?
He was in charge of the Glenowitz operation, and he was covering up an obvious suicide, and he wanted to make it 100% admit to it. And now the county's settling with hundreds of thousands of dollars for wrongful arrests.
Right. Wasn't the state of Illinois pretty upset that he used all them helicopters and all that other stuff? All these people, all law enforcement from state to counties, and I believe also it was Department of Conservation officers as well, were looking for these individuals, and there were no such individuals.
Well, they're upset. They're not taking George to court. So
Right.
they may be upset, but they're not going to do anything because bad cops stick together.
Okay, Tom. Well, listen, I've got another call that's going to be coming in here in a few seconds. I want to thank you for taking your time out this afternoon and talking to the people on Stephen Avery's project, talking also on the Melissa Calusinski case, which is my daughter. I'm not going to stop until she's out, Tom. I'm going to keep fighting until she is home.
Yeah,
So-
we all are. We all are. They don't understand you, and they don't understand me.
Right.
We never give up. We don't give up till we're dead.
Right.
Okay? We will win, and we will make sure they never ever run again.
Okay, Tom. Well, listen, God bless you and your family. Have a nice Easter, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon someday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you
Bye.
again. Bye-bye. Well, everybody, you heard from two people now. You heard from Dr. Rudd. You heard from Paul Forman. And it is just such a shame that where we're at today, Melissa should be home by now. A couple things that I want to take and show you. He was talking about the wrongful convictions in here in Lake County regarding how bad it is. The names of people, there's one called Juan Rivera. Then there was Jerry Hobbs, Levitt Burt, and Stephen Lennicott, I believe that's his name. And you could see a lot of the information on this. If you look up online, it's within false confessions. And another thing too is that Time Magazine put together a 25-year edition. It's called Innocent, the Fight Against Wrongful Convictions. And if you look on page 50 and 51, they've got Melissa's story on there. They did a fantastic job on this and brought it out to the public. For folks that haven't seen this, I'm pretty certain that you can get a hold of Time Magazine and still get a copy of that.
Well, I also, let me interject there, I have a couple of copies of that at home.
Okay.
So that could be something we can do as a fundraiser.
There you go.
Sign it and we raffle it off.
Right. And then the People magazine. And this is dated back on October 24th, I got the hiccups today. 2016. It has daycare tragic accident or murder, and it's a 4-page story. And by the way, this is the picture of the parents of Benjamin Kingen, and this is my wife Cheryl.
You never see Cheryl. Cheryl never wants to be in pictures.
Right. And then this is the march we did when we shut down the streets out in Lake County. We did a march out there. But if you get a chance, you also want to pick this up. And one of the other things, too, that I was going to bring up is that you might want to watch February of 2015, and then I think the other one was also, I want to say, I believe it was July of 2015. The first 2 episodes on Melissa's case were done by Aaron Moriarty and CBS.
Helen shared the links.
Right. And that is the story called Blaming Melissa with 48 Hours. And then there's another one in 2016 called The Fight for Melissa. Aaron and 48 Hours did a very good job on that. As a matter of fact, when they did that story about my daughter, the Twitter and why the case was going on TV and they were showing the program on 48 Hours, they couldn't keep up with the Facebook and asking questions to Erin and the people on there about her case and what they knew. And she also Erin won an award, so did 48 Hours, called the Gracie Award. And we were invited to go to California, and we sat at the table with Erin and some of the producers and other people who were receiving awards. But Erin did a very good job, and she received a well-deserved of telling my daughter's story on how she was wrongly accused and her false confession and everything. And today she still fights. She's still sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens here at federal court.
Let me say real quick before you say anything else, because somebody was talking about donating money. Helen, can you post a link to the GoFundMe so people can donate directly to the family?
Okay, I've got one more call here, and then we're going to get to the board over here. Hold on one second.
7,
That's Ichabod and Oreo back there
1,
as we're waiting for him to dial. Oreo is on the left.
That's Melissa's dog.
Yeah.
That's the puppy she was talking about in the interrogation going home to.
Oh, James. James Dickock just said, I will catch up with the last 30 minutes or so of this tonight. So I don't know if he's now got to leave. Were you trying to call him?
Who's that?
James Dickock?
No, I'm calling a professor of criminal law.
Well, and James, if you're still here and you're leaving, thank you so much for all the comments you've put on here during this live. Because when people have been asking questions, James has been answering them.
Well,
Along
thank
with
you
Helen.
very much, James. I appreciate that 100%. Yeah, I'm ready to put you on. Okay, I'm going to introduce you. Hold on one second. Stand by. That's fine. That's fine. I know. Stand by. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody on Facebook, I want to introduce you to Professor Matt Stanton. He can kind of give you an idea of what he's a professor of, and then we'll go through some questions and answers with him. He hasn't got much time. I'm sorry, Matt. Everybody else kind of took a little bit longer than I thought. Go ahead, Matt.
All right. Hi, Paul. Thanks for inviting me to come on. I've been a professor of law for, about 15 years now. I teach special topics in constitutional law, besides being in full-time practice as an attorney. So, what...
Yeah, Matt. Now I kind of want to bring you into the round. If you could, give us, knowing of what you know about Melissa's case and about wrongful convictions, kind of give the public an idea of wrongful convictions and how and why they happen, and what do you think we can do to, such as my daughter's case, change all that?
Well, first it's important to understand that any county prosecutor has nearly unchallenged discretion in what they're going to choose to prosecute and really how they're going to go about the prosecution. Wrongful convictions are a major problem in the country, but, especially in Lake County, Illinois, where there's a long history of wrongful convictions and some of the most egregious in the country. Now, there's several reasons why that happens. One of it is which there's some sometimes there's a little too close of a relationship with the prosecution and the law enforcement authority, where once you start collecting evidence and an arrest is made, you're looking for a conviction rather than what the prosecutor's primary role is to seek after justice. And sometimes they can coincide, but to view one's success as a prosecutor as to how many convictions you have sort of blindsides the whole operation.
As to that, you have been in court listening to Melissa's case. You've been at a lot of the hearings and listening. Based on what you have heard and the evidence that's been put forth, what is your opinion and your aspect of how they did what they did to Melissa? And do you think that there should be a way not only to correct what they did to Melissa, but to correct it in general within Lake County and through the officials?
Well, my first statements about Melissa's case were when I was a candidate for state's attorney.
Oh, right, that's right. I forgot to mention
the
that.
primary, which and I had a press release at the time, and that's there's different ways to enter into the story. My entry point was when the county's own coroner, their own medical expert, examined the X-rays in your daughter's case and concluded from the factual evidence that the mechanism for death could have not happened. It was a medical impossibility. So, I mean, there's different ways, and I'm sure your listeners probably know the story if you talked about some of the story.
Right. Well,
but from my standpoint, it was the most interesting was that you had this medical evidence that could have been used to exonerate your daughter.
Right, but you can't change science. Once science is put out there and science shows that she's innocent, such as it was, I believe that the coroner changed it from homicide to undetermined. So that should be one aspect of the case to where my daughter should have been home a long time ago, correct?
Well, one of the things that I had a hard time understanding was why the state's attorney would not join the defense attorney in bringing this to court to have a rehearing or introduce that evidence.
Right.
Rather than fighting to preserve the conviction.
Right. In other words, getting a new trial for my daughter. He simply, as Dr. Rudd and I were talking about just a little while ago, that he had an integrity unit and that he refused. He says that, quote unquote, he looked at it and decided that there wasn't sufficient evidence. I thought once you put an integrity unit together, that basically you give them the information, they come back and tell you whether or not if it has merit or not. Am I looking at it the right way or the wrong way?
Well, I think what we have in Lake County, my understanding is the volunteer-based integrity unit that has not examined that many cases all told, and I would think your daughter's would be one of the first ones that was examined, but I don't believe it was ever given to the committee. Am I right about that?
Right. It was never given to the committee. Actually, somebody in the public sent the stuff to the committee, and the committee actually went to Mike Neerheim, and they wanted to turn around and actually told Mr. Neerheim that they thought it was a good idea that he reopen the case and give her a new trial, but yet he was more interested in protecting George Folenko himself and Detective Hyde because of the mistakes that they made.
Well, that's, I hear you, and that's, when you start looking around for someone's motives, when you get a conclusion that doesn't seem to make sense.
Okay,
So,
well, within mind, it's my understanding that the public is asking you to once again run in 2020. And while you're here on the Avery's Project and on the podcast here, can can the people count on you to run again against Mr. Nierheim now that we know what we know and now the proof is out there? And what do you say to that?
Well, I haven't ruled it out. I mean, there's been, we put on a strong race, and I think the county voters were very responsive. We got about 0.1% below 48% of the vote on a very, very small budget. And I think the people in the country and the people in Lake County are waking up to the fact that there's an immense amount of power that's concentrated in the state's attorney's office. The state's attorney's office deciding on how they prosecute and what kinds of priorities they have can have a direct impact on the incarceration rate and, you know, how many people go to prison, how many don't, and that's something that they can accomplish quicker than legislation can be accomplished based on the policies.
Right, but
So,
for excuse the word, but for shits and grins, if you were a prosecutor and this came before you, and you looked at the case with the medical evidence showing that it was impossible for what they said that my daughter did, especially one, that it had an old injury and that was proven. 2, there was no fracture on the skull. And 3, that if it was a 1 to 2 story fall, there would have been blood and the child's body would have been all broken up, and that didn't even exist.
well, yes, I hear what you're saying. I think that any prosecutor has to base their decisions on what they see as evidence. And what you're citing is evidence. So that, to me, seems like it merits another look.
Right. Why do you think it is that Mike Nierheim, not just because of the police officers, why do you think it is that he's refusing to give my daughter a new hearing?
I really can't begin to guess. It's, you know, the state's attorney's a political office. It was made a political office so that it could be responsive to the electorate. So the people, it belongs to the people.
But now the people themselves are coming out and crying foul and saying what they are saying about my daughter's case, that they've got a young lady that's in prison for a crime she didn't do, and he's not listening to the people. What say you?
I say that the people's voice is heard through the vote. That's the method that we have, and it's the choice of the voters. Public officials are also self-interested as a general rule, and they're looking at protecting themselves in their position, as well as looking at administering their duties. So,
like Paul Forman, yeah, like Paul Forman and Dr. Rudd, they all say the same thing, that not only does Melissa deserve a new trial, but we need to really find out and get down to the bottom of what happened to Benjamin. And the parents deserve that, the public deserves that, and of course, Melissa deserves it. Our families all deserve it. I mean, we have been going through hell for the last 10 years, and you kind of know a little bit more than some people, but you've gotten to know my family and everything, and you've gotten to know a lot about Melissa's case. You got a lot to know about what happened with Dr. Rudd and his elections and everything and what they did to him. But the most important thing is the public needs to know the truth of what happened to Benjamin. She deserves a new trial. And, you know, it just shocks me that no matter how much we try, I mean, right now we're in federal court. We're praying daily that under the Habeas Corpus, that we're going to wind up getting a new trial, hopefully. Can you explain to the public about Habeas Corpus before you go real quick?
Yeah, Habeas Corpus brought federally. The federal Constitution overcomes state laws. Federal overcomes state. So if any person is held wrongfully in a prison, whether it's a state case like your daughter's or federal, you can bring a federal action of habeas corpus to bring that matter before a federal court based on a violation of the Constitution is one way if somebody's wrongfully held. And that can be based on new information that wasn't available at the time. It can be based on errors that took place in court, and a number of things. So it's basically using the federal power to correct a wrong that was not able to be corrected at a state level. I just want to mention, though, too, that, you know, the state's attorneys are, it's probably the most conservative of the legal offices. And it's something, you know, the answer to faulty democracy, in my view, is more democracy. It's more transparency. It's not about covering things up and telling the public it's none of their business or don't worry, we know what we're doing. And injustice is an injury to the soul of everyone.
Okay, well, you know...
It involves individuals like your daughter, like Benjamin's family, who are directly affected by it, but it affects us all, and it makes us all less of a people.
Well, you know that Kathleen Zauner, her attorney, also brought up in the case about the Brady violations. Tell the public what Brady violations and what constitute a Brady violation.
Okay, well, briefly, what's known as a Brady violation is the withholding of evidence. We use the term exculpatory evidence. In other words, evidence that you might be able to use to exonerate yourself. So a Brady violation would be a withholding by the prosecution of that evidence from the defense. Because again, what we're seeking here is to resolve something in a just way, in a just manner. So it's not a contest of the prosecution versus the defense. So there's the presumption that there's shared, and there's supposed to be shared evidence. Well, you don't withhold the evidence that might go against your position. We have a duty as lawyers to bring that forward, and there's even a higher duty in the prosecutor's role.
Okay, so that the...
That's available to the defense, and if that's withheld in part or sidestepped, that's a Brady violation.
Okay, well, so in part then, with regards to the old injury and as well as them withholding those x-rays, knowing that they gave Paul DeLuca bad x-rays, knowing that there were good x-rays, so that would constitute as a Brady violation, correct?
As you described it, yes.
Okay.
So, Paul, I do have to leave.
Okay, I understand. All right, well, I want to thank you for taking your time out again, and you and your family have a nice Easter, and God bless you. And again, thank you very much for coming on and explaining some things and helping us out here. So again, Matt, you have a nice holiday, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Paul, and God bless you and your family, and keep up your good work.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm not going to fight until she's home. You know me.
I'm a father myself.
Okay, thanks again, Matt. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, now, in the rest of the information here, I told you that I had some stuff I wanted to show you on a board. So let's do this part of it and go from here. All right, let me get my folders. Okay. I've got up here that October of 2008, and in October of 2008, Melissa didn't work. She worked in Arlington Heights, and that's this right here. She worked in Arlington Heights at the other daycare there, and she was told that once that an opening happened over here in Lincolnshire, she would get a position. Crystal talked to the owner. I believe her name was, God, I can't remember, Katz. And Miss Katz said that once that something opened up, that she'd be more than happy to have Melissa come over. So as time went on, we talk about this old injury that happened to Ben. Now the reason why I bring this up, and I'm not going to give you names, because there's things that we now have found out. Okay? First of all, you got Melissa over here. She's in Arlington Heights. And this is in October 28th of 2008. She's still working in Arlington Heights. So during the time of that happening, there's an incident that happens with Ben. I can't get too much into it because my understanding is it's part of the case yet. So something happens with Ben, okay, and girl 1, I'm going to use girl 1 as M, and girl 2 as B, and man 1 with a B as well. They're in the office at this time because of girl number 4 all of a sudden sends a text to girl number 3 that she quit. So why did she send a text to...
T on the end of that.
What's that?
T on the end of that text.
Text. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just my scratch.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why the text, she quit. Why did this girl quit from a text? Well, October 28th is a big date. And why is that so big? Because that's when Crystal worked at the daycare center. That
And who
Ben,
was Crystal?
Crystal, my daughter, worked at the daycare center over in Minnesota at the one in Lincolnshire. And she noticed that there was a bump on Ben's head. So she let girl 3 know about it, girl 3S know about it, and that there was girl N, girl G, and girl C all knew about this injury because they were working in a room. They were told to keep their mouth shut about the injury. Now, when, I know this sounds complicated, but you got to follow me here. So, when girl 4 got the text, girl number 5, D, is a cousin of that individual, asked if she could get her paycheck. The company said, no, you could not get her paycheck. She wants her paycheck, she's got to come in and get it. Well, I'll tell you, girl 4 would not come in and get her paycheck. And it's because of the bump that happened to Ben. Now, at that time, we're going to move forward. Melissa now comes over and starts working in the room where Ben was at in November. And it was near the end of November, first part of December. So now Melissa's working there a couple of months. Remember what they were talking about, circumference size and Ben's head getting like a light bulb, and he would throw himself back. We talked about that with Dr. Rudd and Paul Forman. Well, it's my understanding in talking to individuals and people who I've talked to is that during the time of Ben's death, girl 1, girl 2, and man 1 went into a room with the owner, okay? She is deceased. She's not living no more. She died of cancer. But at the time, it was girl 1, girl 2, and man 1, plus the owner were in this room with the shades drawn and the door locked. Now, it's my understanding that the information that we got, they would not let girl 3 in, which was girl 3S. They would not let her in the room. And the reason they wouldn't let her in the room, and this was brought out in public, they were shredding documents. And that included Benjamin Kingan's medical records, Benjamin Kingan's records, and other records of individuals where there were complaints drawn up about individual children and things that happened where they had to write them up. Now, remember, they wouldn't let the girl 3 in the room. Remember, that was girl 3 back in October that got the text from girl number 4. She quit. Why did she quit? The reason is the bump on the back of the head. We can't tell you what happened to Ben. We know what happened to Ben, but at that time, girl 4 knows exactly what happened to Ben. And we're not assuming, but we've been told that she was busy texting on her phone, and Ben crawled over to her and wanted up on her lap. He would go up, 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 and wanted to get on her lap. Well, you know what? Something happened. I can't tell you what happened, but this I can tell you is that the shredding of these documents plays into the injury of October the 28th, 2008. And why, when the girls were interviewed, meaning my daughters, saying all the girls that worked there had brought up about the October injury, and the police, and this is George Falenko, his words, nobody else's. It's insignificant bullshit. Had nothing to do with it. And that's further from the truth, as we all heard today about this old injury. This old injury played into the death of this little boy back from October the 28th. He had a habit of throwing his head back. He would get angry, or if he wanted to get attention, he would sit Indian style, and it was brought up in court, he would throw himself back. Well, shredding of these documents, even though that the mother is now gone, why is girl 1, girl 2, and man 1 not being investigated about what documents they were shredding? Why is it that they're getting away with not talking to any police or law enforcement of what happened? Because they were in the room, and part of that group that was shredding the documents, remember, they wouldn't let girl 3 in there. They closed the drapes, and girl 3 couldn't get in there. Girl 3 was a individual who was a supervisor of these other rooms. But because the owners of these, what they were doing and shredding, they wouldn't let girl 3 in there. They didn't want her to know. Why? And what was the purpose of them shredding the documents? Remember that document we got? They said that there was no anything with Minnie Subi of any kind of child neglect or anything. Remember, Melissa's working in Arlington Heights in October and the first couple weeks of November. She wasn't there yet. She wasn't there when that bump happened on Benjamin. She wasn't working there. Why is it that the police officer said it was insignificant bullshit? This needs to be reopened. And I pray to God, I know Kathleen has done a very good job. Most, and I do say this, most of any attorney that I can think of, and how she wins her cases and what she does with things regarding the law and what they've done. This is part of a new trial. We now know. We now have the science. Remember what I said, and I just spoke with Matt about, Dr. Rudd and Paul Forman? You can't change science. You can't go back and erase all that. It's the science that not only shows Melissa's innocent, but it's the science that shows that in 2008 of October, that little boy got a bump on his head. And remember, girl number 4, she quit. She didn't come back to work after that. She did something to Benjamin. We know what it is, but we cannot tell you. I know it sucks. Trust me. I want to come out and tell you it sucks with a big S. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave you with this. Is that I'm not going to stop fighting until the truth comes out. Even if I've got, and I'm hoping, and I meant to say this earlier, I hope somebody from law enforcement has listened to everything today and understanding what I'm doing here on this board, because I'm being told I'm doing the work for you, but you want to know what? If it brings Melissa home and gets her out of prison for something she was accused of doing that she didn't do, remember, she's in Arlington Heights. She's not over here in Lincolnshire. She's in Arlington Heights. And one other thing, a little boy, when she was working at Arlington Heights, this I can tell you, knocked Melissa's glasses off. Don't you think a little boy slapped Melissa's glasses off on her face and he left a mark? Don't you think she would have done something if she was that kind of person? Absolutely not. Because she's not that kind of person. The other thing, there were drugs that were brought to this school here in somebody's backpack. Arlington Heights police investigated it, and something was done about this. There's a lot more that's going on here, everybody. That old injury, the scab, the blood, the iron in the blood, the x-ray showing no fracture. Don't you think that if I threw somebody down on the floor, or that she threw somebody, that the bones would have busted up and all kinds of stuff would have happened to that little kid? There was nothing, not one broken bone, not one iota, nothing. There was no blood on the floor. There was no blood splat all over. The little boy was lethargic. He had projectile vomiting coming out of his mouth. That little boy was crying for help. On that Monday, the parents did not take him to the doctor. They just kept him home on Tuesday. And that Wednesday, they brought him back in, and he died. Melissa had nothing to do with that. You know what? Girl number 4. Why did you text that you quit? Why didn't you come back? Why did you ask your cousin to come get your check? This all needs to be reopened. Like Mr. Forman said, you owe it to Ben's parents, and you owe it to Melissa, and you owe it to us. Guys, in closing, I don't know how much more I can say. I hope you were able to follow things today. And if you're interested, we have, Jax will be handling this for us. We have t-shirts available. We got 16, I think 16 large and 12 or 13 of the extra large. You get a shirt, you get a hat, and I thought there was a wristband here.
There was a wristband up there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at.
Oh, there's
There
one
it
on.
is.
Okay.
Okay, you get all of this. If,
We also have car stickers, but I didn't find
there's
one.
car
in my
stickers that say Melissa's Army. And if you feel that you want to donate for the shirt, the hat, the sticker, they're looking, and this would include the fee of, or if you just want a shirt, it's $30 or $20 for the shirt, and then it's $25 for the hat, the wristband, and the sticker. Total of $60. If you want to help, there's a GoFundMe page that's set up. It's been posted online. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today because my daughter is in jail. And I'm going to read you a letter that I got from Melissa a long time ago and ending. And it starts like this. Mom and Dad, how are you guys? Well, I'm okay. I'm down in Logan. This is when she was transferred from Dwight to Logan. I got here today, so when you guys come down here this weekend, you guys are on my list. Any more good news? I've been writing on my calendar. I'm going home. It's okay here. It's like all over, but I get to watch my own TV. I'm so ready to go home. Maybe when you guys come to see me, that you can bring Bob. He can also come with you guys to see me. I would like to see him too. I can't wait to see you guys. I will be calling Crystal very soon to let her know, and also let her know that I'm okay. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Love always, Melissa. These are the kind of letters that we get all the time from Melissa, and it's hard. It's real hard. It's even harder when you go down and see her, and you gotta leave her behind. I mean, I'm always on the way home consoling Cheryl and telling her, it's going to be all right, Cheryl. She'll be home soon. And with this new filing, I'm hoping that you guys can read and see Kathleen is doing the best that she can do to get my little girl home. So in ending, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to come on the Stephen Avery's project today. And God bless you all. Melissa says hi. And I'll talk to you guys real soon.